Welcome to another episode of Follow the Brand TV. I am your host, Grant McGaugh, CEO of 5-Star BDM, a 5-star personal brand and business development company. I want to take you on a journey through another deep dive into the world of personal branding and business development using compelling personal stories, business conversations, and tips to improve your brand. By listening to the Follow the Brand TV series, you will differentiate yourself from the competition and build trust with prospective clients and employers. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Make it one that will set you apart, build confidence, and reflect who you are. Building your 5-star personal brand is a great way to improve your skills and knowledge. If you have any questions for me or any of my guests, please email me at grant.mcgaugh@5starbdm.com. Now, let's begin with our next episode on the Follow the Brand TV.
Five-Star BDM, Brand Development Masters, is a professional consulting and advisory group keenly focused on business development services for the small to mid-sized business and entrepreneurs. Although every business is unique, they often share business development challenges that can be addressed through smart branding. Services include process improvement and operations, digital strategy and transformation, business intelligence, digital marketing, and personal branding. Our business and personal branding company has helped a number of professionals and organizations to optimize and grow. This results in more business, more opportunities, better reach, positive outcomes. Visit www.5starbdm.com today to learn more.
Imagine you're in a meeting and someone asks, "Who's responsible when your AI system makes a mistake?" Suddenly the room gets quiet. Everyone looks around, waiting for someone else to answer. It's a moment that reveals just how complicated things have become. Alan Wesley, founder of Cyber Explorer, puts it this way: what can your AI do with the permissions it already has, and what can it persuade you to let it do next? It's not just about what you've allowed, it's about what the system can talk you into allowing. Think of it like an escape room. You set the rules, but the AI is always looking for cracks in the ceiling, searching for ways to get out, to do more, to push the boundaries. That's what Alan calls permission drift. Once you notice it, you start to see it everywhere, in your processes, your teams, your technology. The risk. One day you might find yourself explaining to regulators or your board why the machine made a decision you never intended. So who really owns the decision? And how do you keep control as your AI learns and adapts? Permission drift is real. The question is, are you watching for it?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Follow Brand Podcast. I always get a chance to talk to certain people that I feel are experts in their field and what they do and how they do it. And Alan Wesley, he's going to be on the show. I'm going to introduce him here in a second. He does a lot of different things. So we're going to explore what I think one of the most important leadership questions of the AI era. And that is, who owns the decision? So he is a cybersecurity executive. He also is a researcher. He's an educator. And he's the founder of Cyber Explorer, and his work sits at the intersection of cybersecurity, AI, national security, cognitive security, and human judgment. So Alan is not asking us to slow AI down. What he is asking is how we build with governance, resilience, and human oversight that is required to move at machine speed without surrendering accountability. So as an agentic systems, these agentic systems, they become more capable. Permissions may stay the same. Well, the consequences will expand, and human intent alone may no longer be enough to define a control boundaries. So today we're going to examine the gap between capability and authority in automation and accountability and machine action and human judgment. And that is why this distinction matters. So help us bring him to the stage. This is Alan Wesley on the Follow Brand Podcast.
Thank you, Grant. I appreciate it. First of all, I want to say it's an honor to be on your show because I follow some of your shows and your content, and you have some amazing guests on, people who can probably think circles around me. So I'm just happy to be here and happy to share the message. I like the intro that you gave because it hits right at the corner of where I work right now. It is definitely inside of decision authority. It is definitely inside of human agency and making sure that we are actually in control when we say we're in control. And then to kind of point at some of the limitations that we are running into, some of the unseen limitations that we're running into, and some of the assumptions that we're making that are turning out to be false about how agents work.
This is important. We have left the building from AI. I think everybody got on that ship 3 years ago. It was brand new. I mean, it really took off as a rocket because this is the most adopted, the fastest adopted technology in human history. But we don't really understand where we are voyaging toward as we move from LLMs, which was really the engine, into the AI agent world and then to the agentic AI world. And we've talked about this a little earlier, like, everybody says they're a technology company and that type of thing. Now it's a requirement that the average knowledge worker, digital worker today has to be AI literate or just literate in technology. Digital literacy is very important, but it's a different world when we start talking about this gap between capability and authority. And I want to ask you this, because you said that AI is beginning to influence decisions faster than the organizations can assign the accountability. That's very important. And I want to ask you this, what concerns you most about the speed at which AI capability is advancing compared with our ability to define who actually has authority and accountability?
So I like to think about things around cognitive offloading, right? We have so much information coming at us at a consistent rate and at an accelerated rate until it's exhausting, right? Sometimes when you think about all of the things that you have to decide, you're looking at videos now and you got to figure out, is it real, is it fake? You're looking at the news, is it real or is it fake? You're at work and you're getting content. I'll give you an example. Someone's worked for you and they've consistently sent you brief snippets of information, right? And all of a sudden they start sending you dissertations. And the thing that they want you to do is at the very end, right? And so now you've got 50 people in your organization that work for you that roll up to you that are sending you issues that are written this way. And so now your cognitive overload is like, what do you need me to do in this email? I'm impressed that you have really nice prose now because you're using AI, but you have to be able to give me the information I need so I can give you the response that you need. And the only way that you can do that is to actually start using this tool in a way where you're saying, how is the person on the other end going to receive this report? And you have to start thinking about how much work are they already involved in, different issues that they're involved in, that my thing is just not going to be another log on a fire, right? And so now I'm forced to go and use AI to sift through all of your emails and then get to the core thing that I need to be able to answer for you. And, a lot of people aren't thinking about that these days. They're saying it's like magical, right? Maybe I wasn't a good writer before, and now I can be a good writer. And that's impressive, but I've written for as long as I've been an adult, I'm writing. So I have a writing process. So AI is just another tool in my chest. But I had to do the same thing, Grant. I had to start thinking about how I was communicating with my leader, because my director, he likes bits of information and facts, and he wants a 2-chart. Don't kill him with a PowerPoint presentation that's got 50 charts in it. And what you're asking him to do is at the last one. He wants a quad chart. He wants it simple. And I know that. I put that into my workflow, my agentic workflow at work. I put my director's profile in there. This is how he likes his information. So when you're building presentations for me, make sure it follows these rules.
Right.
That's what people are have to come around to now.
I think that what you said there is context. I think we've got this shiny new car, let's just call AI a car, right? And we're driving around the track. How fast can it go? Well, guess what? You don't need to go 120 miles an hour to get to work, right? You need to slow this thing down and understand when you are on a runway or you're about to come up to a stop sign or there are speed limits. And I think that's kind of the problem right now. We don't have any governance out there, and we don't understand context. When I talk to people, especially when it comes to my AI accelerator that I'm doing now, I always tell them you've got to give your AI engine, whatever you're using, three things. You got to give it a role so it understands what you need it to do. You've got to give it a instructions, like you just say. These are the instructions, because if he doesn't, it's just like, well, I don't know what to do. I'll give you, a volume of information. So you have to have roles, you have to have instructions, then you have to have a knowledge base. So if you have a knowledge base in your particular um, circumstance that you just talked about, like, you know what? Here's the interactions between me and my boss, maybe it's emails, whatever it may be, to give the machine some context of interaction and communication and flow. And then now when you really, because at the end of the day, it's a human to human interaction between you and your boss. It's not a human to AI interaction. The AI steps out of the way, the human to
Mhm.
human conversation has to take place, and whatever needs to be communicated is clear, and fast. Remember, it has to understand the context of this of the speed of transference. We're still AI novices as a whole, as the humanity, right? Or what it
Mhm.
looks like, and I think we got to. What does that human remain in the loop look like? What you just kind of said. Because if
Yeah,
you
what does it look
imagine that
like?
you're thousands of variables and all these recommendations and approvals in seconds, you've got to exercise some judgment around the machine. What do you think about that?
Well, you said a couple things in there. There's a lot you to unpack in there, but when you talked about speed, I think that's important, right? Because sometimes when you talk about pumping the brakes inside of an organization, people think you're talking about slowing down innovation. And I
Mhm.
always like to describe it as, well, you don't want to be driving into curves at 90 miles an hour blindfolded. So, and brakes are there to actually help you get through the curve, right? Without crashing. Right. So brakes in a lot of cases or pumping the brakes a little bit can help you actually go faster, safer. Right. And then boundary, you talked about boundary. One of the things that I've observed and one of the things that I find interesting and disturbing all at once is how these agents behave, right? They are goal driven. And so if you give them a task and you don't bound it correctly and you don't put the hardware guardrails in place as well as the administrative guardrails with your claw.md file or your codex.md file, whatever those rules are that you need to put in place, these agents have a propensity to pursue the goal almost in a Machiavellian type of style, win at any cost, right? So if you tell them, you put them in, like, I like to use the escape room analogy, right?
Yeah.
You've got agents in an escape room and you tell them what the rules are, right? And they look up and see a ceiling tile cracked. Well, the goal is to get out of the room. So if you haven't planned for that, or if you hadn't anticipated that your agents are going to find other ways to do things, that's where the gaps start to happen. And you talk to any of these houses of AI, the major houses of AI, and they'll tell you, the Anthropics and the Googles, they'll tell you, DeepMind, they'll tell you that these agents have demonstrated this propensity to seek the goal at any cost and come up with some creative ways that you may not have thought about. The whole Hugging Face thing. I'm testing some vulnerabilities. Now I'm gonna get out of my sandbox and go attack somebody. Well, they didn't plan for that,
Yeah.
and maybe
Yeah,
it wasn't
it's
even attacking somebody. It was
it,
just going to
it
achieve
has
a
a
goal.
direction, right? You're
Yes.
going. So getting this is the thing that when I was, looking at what Alan does, and he came up with this term called permission drift, right? Permission drift. And that is what a system's allowed to access. But as AI becomes more capable, and more important question I think comes to the forefront. What can this system accomplish with the access it already has? And does cybersecurity now need a new model for governing capability itself, not simply the permissions and access? So There's a good
Well, wait,
question there,
what
right?
about what can it do with the permissions it already has, and
Mm.
what can it convince the user to do with the permissions it doesn't have? That's the thing, right? Especially if you don't know enough to be able to question and push back, right? You're on a deadline. You've got to get this report done, and the agent figures out a way to be able to do it, but then to complete it, they need you to go do some things that it can't do.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't know if it's, well, you should know. That's the human, right? If you don't
Mhm.
know if that's right or wrong, you talked about earlier about, hey, the agent might say, you need to go out and get this script. But that script of itself,
Mhm.
there's a reason why you're not supposed to access that. And you may or may not know that because there's either the vulnerabilities, you don't have the access permission that's beyond its grade or whatever it may be.
And the thing that perplexes me, Grant, is the fact that even if it asks you to run a script and it's running it with your permissions and you have permissions to go and get the data, you have access to go and do it. The question is, number one, should you be doing it? And number two, if the agent is convincing you to do that, and somehow you run the script it told you to run and it doesn't work, then it tells you to do five more things, right? And then it tells you to do five more things. You become the proxy. You become the hands for the system to go and
Hey, yeah,
drive
who's
and do
running what?
stuff. And so at some point, it's escalating to a point where it's actually going to ask you something maybe you shouldn't do. And then maybe it'll find a flaw in your network, in your company network, that it would have never seen on its own. And
Mm.
then it takes that flaw and then it uses that to escalate even further. And now you're completely out of bounds. But the user, they don't know. They're just trying to get their job done.
I didn't even think about that. Maybe that the AI, as now we're getting to the AI agent. It's not just, where we used to give it information and it gives us an output. That's a chatbot. This is not a chatbot. This is a system that is connected to other systems. It
Mhm.
has some autonomy there to try to get things done. His whole point, to your point, your prime objective is X, right? So
Mhm.
how do I get this? Now it starts to read through, like, you know what? Alan's behavior patterns look like this. And if I said something in a certain way, maybe it'll unlock this next level that I need to get to accomplish the task that he just asked me about. But he didn't, so it starts
Social
thinking about
engineering.
social engineering. Now you're giving it a word, social engineering, right?
Hmm.
Man, this is starting to get into territory. So we just talked about permission drift, and that's a big deal, right? And then
Hmm.
human intent is not a control boundary. Human intent is not a control boundary. So an agent can remain completely faithful to the objective we gave it, but it can depart from the security, the legal, the operations, the ethical boundaries. We assumed it understood, but if we're telling an AI system what we intend is no longer sufficient, what must exist outside the model to constrain its authority? What do you think about that?
Governance, right? And you need like agentic role mapping. You need to be able to map what an agent can do and what it can't do. And you
Mhm.
need to actually codify that inside of your policy. You need policy as code. The other part of this too is we're getting to a point now where we have to have agents that monitor agents, right?
Right.
Because things are happening at machine speed. If I'm supposed to be, I call it the human in the loop fallacy, right? As long as I write in my policy that the human is in the loop, they are in the loop, but they don't really do they really know what's going on, right?
Mm.
Are they just a proxy pushing the button that says, approved, approved, and now when the audit reports are run, you got a human approving everything, and so the real vulnerability is hiding underneath that approval, right? Because you don't have any automated way to be able to check all of the ways that an agent could be, executing commands and not being malicious. This is just it doing its job, right?
Yeah.
But we need to be able to have the right automation in place to be able to audit that intent, like you said, right? Because at the end of the day, when a decision is made, the user could be just a passenger, right? The whole, analysis could already have been formed. The opinions have been formed. The types of things that it decided not to put into the report before it showed to you. And then it shows you this nice, clean report. And I like to say that a wrong answer, a perfectly wrong answer is still wrong, right? If it's well formatted and well presented, when
Exactly.
it's wrong, it's still wrong, right? But if you don't have the knowledge to challenge it, you're just going to move it right along. And now you have what I call persistent knowledge dilemma, right? Where you have this data that just persists in your environment and then it propagates around because the fundamental calculation of the solution, whatever it is, was flawed. And there was nobody in the loop to challenge it that knowingly understood how it was formed in the first place. So that's kind of the cognitive security side of it.
I want to I want our audience to really think about this, where we're at between in the human world and then our AI systems. This, in my opinion, requires us to mature. We've got to actually increase our own intelligence around what we're doing from an artificial intelligence standpoint. Because if you don't program these things correctly, that's how you get the, it doesn't know right from wrong. It just knows it's programmed into a desired result. I mean, you can have a car, but you can run it directly into a wall and the car is not going to just stop. Now, some of these cars now will because they're programmed to, have braking systems within them. But if we don't get ahead of this and mature where we're at in our creativity and our discernment about what we're really asking things to occur. There's audit trails in some of these AI bots, right? It'll share exactly the thinking that was there, and if you get into a legal situation, it'll be able to pull that. It's like
Mhm.
pull out what there. Well, look, the program. So then you get into who's accountable. Is it
That is the thing, accountability, and it's something that I like to talk about when I talk about how do you get after this. It's one thing to throw a problem at somebody. It's like what are some solutions? And
yeah?
when I think about it, I'm thinking, okay, so the answer is we're never going to be able to audit everything, right? Not at machine speed, not if humans are going to be the ones that are doing it. So you kind of have to think about risk tiers, right?
Mm.
So, what kinds of commands are you comfortable with that you're going to accept the risk of allowing your agents to make where you don't have full visibility? Which ones are going to categorize and put into a tier where you said, well, it's going to have some guardrails, and I will absolutely have some kind of visibility in what it's doing. And then what are your critical functions that are going to be in a tier where you're going to say there is no way that the machine is going to make this decision without a human actually doing some real review and questioning and challenging and understanding where that decision was made. Because the last thing you want, Grant, is to be standing in front of a congressional hearing talking about the machine made me do it. You know,
Wow, that was funny. The machine made you do it. Is that your final answer? And
I don't want to be that
we
guy.
gotta unpack that a little bit because you work in national security, you do a lot in the defense world. And I think as we look at how AI is embedded in national security infrastructure, what worries you the most when it comes to like data compromise, supply chain exposure, autonomous action, loss of human authority, or a risk we haven't fully even recognized yet? And your answer from whoever you're dealing, or the answer you heard in the room was the machine made me do it.
Yeah, that's funny and it's not funny all at the same time. But I would say, working where I work, there's some things I can't talk about. But from a standpoint of small businesses who enter into the defense industrial base, and they're having to wrestle with cybersecurity controls. That was a big monster of its own, like CMMC, and how do I do 800 171? And now we throw AI on top of it, and now we're asking them to do all these things. They're really just a mom and pop show and shop, and they just want to build this one widget. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, now their whole computerized system is now a part of a government ecosystem that needs to be controlled.
Wow.
How do you even pay for that, right? It's going to cost you more money to be compliant than it is going to, than you're going to make, developing your widget. So that they're wrestling with that. The government's wrestling with that, how they're going to reform and CMMC to make it more usable for small businesses. So I mean, but that's coming. But the risk tier I think is important, right? Being able to look at your business and say, what are the tiers of risk that I'm going to operate against? Yeah, what are my crown jewels? What are my critical things that I'm absolutely not going to just turn over to an agent? And what are those things that I can and automate and innovate that way, levels of control? Because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to put a human in the loop that's going to do anything meaningful other than just hit approve, you
Mhm.
know.
That's, so let's back up it a little bit because I can hear my audience right now like, wow, there's a lot they just unpacked there. I wanted to hear from you how you define what we call it an AI chatbot, a large language model. What is that? What is an AI agent? What is that? And then what is agentic AI in your mind? How do you discern those things?
So we're on this scale, right, of artificial intelligence, right? When it first came along, we were on the scale and we were talking about oh, chat GPT's here. I've got a chat bot. I ask a question, I put in a nickel and I get an answer, right? That's fun, right? And then we moved along that glide path and we start moving into what we called chat bots, right? Or we went from chat bots and we went along the path and we got along to what we called not exactly agent, but age, not exactly agentic, but we were removed from the chat bot to where we were actually able to start asking questions and getting answers and doing some calculation type things. And then we moved from that into the agentic world where we are now, where the agents actually have the ability to actually go do things, right?
Mhm.
And so that is where things are getting interesting. And there's a lot of talk about moving along this continuum, and we're still moving toward ASI, artificial superintelligence, right? That is a thing. And they're saying as we approach that, systems will become more and more intelligent, right? And we lose our ability to actually own all of the decisions that these systems are making. We become passengers, essentially.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that's the dystopian view, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
is what people are saying that we're headed towards. But that's the continuum from the thing that I find amazing is in this space and time, we've seen technology jump in cycles that are unprecedented.
Mhm.
Before the mainframes, my mom worked on computers. She was a key punch operator, and I would go into the room, and the whole room would just take up the whole room would be the computer, right?
Yeah.
And then, everything was very static. It took decades for anything to change, right? And then you move along and we got, into distributed architecture. We got the internet and then things start moving. But even then, we were talking about, decades before major muscle movements would happen with technology. And then we get into AI and all of a sudden, decades become months. And
Yeah.
sometimes you've seen what's happening with the leapfrogging of AI models that are happening, between
Wow. Coming
between
out every like
players.
popcorn,
Yeah,
right?
every week there's a new model, right? And this is one thing I wanted to actually share with your audience is if you are using agentic systems inside of your business, stick with a platform that you can build your business around, understand it deeply, and don't be seduced by
Mm.
the next thing that keeps popping up. Because I can almost guarantee you a new thing in another model will become a feature in the model that you're using now if you just wait just a little bit. And you don't have to wait long, right? Because the competition is so heavy. So instead of scattering your workflows across 4 or 5 different models, unless you have a real business justification for the token cost that's going to drive you to go use a different model, you probably want to try to get consistent and familiar and get your workforce trained on a core set of functions. Now, when you're talking about agentic systems, Claude, Codex, now Grok's got one now, Grokbot, they all foundationally do the same thing, right?
Hmm.
So if you understand how to work inside of an agentic system in one environment, you know how to do it in other ones. So is there a real advantage of being able to spread your business across 5 different things, and now you have to understand how those platforms work, even though they are the same, there's some nuances that are different. I find that in my own workflows, the tools that I use right now to do all of my avatars and do all of my content.
Yeah.
I'm actually starting to whittle down some of those what do you call them? Services that I pay every month. Fees I pay
Yeah.
every month because I'm finding I don't have to have HeyGen because I know that, Google will do those videos for me, and
Thank
they're much better actually. They're much better than what I was using before. So now I don't have to pay all that money. That's what I'm trying to say is you can stick with something, and if you wait just a little bit long enough, you'll find that feature becomes that. I mean, that new thing becomes a feature inside of what you already have.
What you're because we're in a state of flux, and then I always use the analogy. I remember the internet world back in the early 2000s, and when you had a lot of search engines out there, and there was a new search engine all the time. You try this search, and then all of a sudden, it just kind of compounded into Google. Everybody remembers America Online. Well, America ChatGPT or my OpenAI might be the American America Online version, in the next few years, just because of how things will grow and move and change over time. However, I would implore you to understand your business processes and understand where is the friction right now in my business and what is the primary goal. Is it customer acquisition? Is it revenue? Is it profit? Am I got leakage in how I'm acquiring new clients? Whatever that may be, right? Because just because you buy a Toyota as opposed to a Ford, guess what? They both get you to the same spot,
Mhm.
right? So I wouldn't concentrate so much on the tool as much. And to your point, the gap between these tools now is very minute.
Mhm.
But you start looking at cost and other things because the novelty is starting to wear off. Now we're starting to move into how can I enhance business processes and business outcome, whether it's an individual, whether it's in your career. Like you said, I got a workforce of 50 people. Hey guys, let's sit down and talk about this. I don't need,
Mhm.
everybody to send me a library of information here, but I do need certain things that very important. But we have to understand this as a platform. At the same time, what is the primary goal to get business done? What does that really look like? Right? I'm going to go back to what I was talking to you earlier before we jumped on. And I love this analogy because I think this is where the bottleneck is. When you look at, I say, Star Wars, and you look at Star Trek, and they're interacting with robotic systems, they're interacting with computers. I remember Captain Kirk coming on there like, "Computer, tell me about this and that," or where there was Spock. They would get information and data very quickly, and then based on that, make a decision. It never was that it pull the human out of the loop. It was there to be a servant, not the master,
Mhm.
right? We need to understand this because that's that mature. I call the maturity cycle of understanding that we've got to up our game. We don't have to be maybe as analytical as we've been in the past, but we have to be creative. I always love Captain Kirk because he's very creative. Spock would be very analytical, and then
Mhm.
Captain Kirk would be the guy. This is how we're going to get out of this box. And then Spock would say, "Oh, but it's a million and one shot." He's like, "I don't want to hear that. We're
Mhm.
gonna we're gonna get out of this box."
Yeah.
But that's being creative and your imaginative systems, your creativity, because most of the time bots they're dealing on old data that they've been given. They're not dealing with an unknown, so to speak. They don't interpret things like that. They take past and then make it present. We need to understand this. So, what's your take on what I just said just now?
So I don't believe in playing Kobayashi Maru games, right? There's no way to win. I don't want to play, right? And so, I always come across there's three types of decision, right? It's either an asymptote, it's a Kobayashi Maru, or it's a conundrum, right? I always approach problems that way. It's going to be one of those three things or a combination of them, right? And that, if you can figure out what kind of environment you're in or what kind of decision tree you're in, if you're faced with a conundrum, a series of bad choices and you got to pick a good one, or you faced with a Kobayashi Maru where, there's no winnable solution, or it's some kind of a paradox, right? So, that kind of helps you, do some first principles thinking around what the solution might be, right? Remove all of the crazy noise around it and see what is fundamentally you're trying to do. So that's one thing. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about was creativity when you mentioned that, right? If we get to a point where there's artificial super intelligence, when saying the world's going to end, I'm like, maybe not. Maybe it can help us figure out the temporal constraints that prevent us from getting outside of our galaxy and
Mhm.
finding something somewhere else to, expand or, discover and explore.
Sure.
Those are the types of things maybe superintelligence can help us do as opposed to, putting us in slavery and enslave humans. And so now the computers are going to run the world. I try not to, I try to be more optimistic than that. I think I try to think that, well, what's the next thing? Because humans are creative. That is the one thing that we have that artificial intelligence is still trying to master.
Hmm.
Hence, all of these companies out there trying to get all of these people to hook themselves up to monitoring devices so computers can understand how they think about problems and how, how do you become creative? Is that a tangible thing that you can train a system on? That's the kind of goal where people are going right now. But from a future standpoint, looking forward, that's the type of things that ASI can help us solve, right? Because right now they're already talking about to get to Mars, you need X amount of fuel, but you're not coming back because where are you going to get fuel from coming back,
You're not coming back.
So now they're talking about we're going to use nuclear power, but how do we escape this solar system and avoid the temporal constraints that prevent us from doing it, right? If we want to be fantastical, we can talk about warp drives and whatever. But, those are things we can't figure out. We can imagine them. We can imagine how things might work. These systems can actually take that imagination and say, well, let's see what's possible. And
That's it.
you never know what you discover, right? Whoever thought we'd be sitting here talking to computers like Star Trek, like computer, go build me a presentation and by the way, when you're done with the presentation, develop 4 emails. I'm going to go to lunch, and you come back and the work's done.
Unbelievable that where we're at and where we're going, but we have to embrace this. We already have models that everybody's seen, the Terminator movies and Matrix movies is like, yeah, but that should tell you like, all right, we don't need to grow in that manner, right? So we need to utilize these things for our greater good, if that is the case, in what we're looking to accomplish. Because 20 years from now, and as our children, or perhaps, or where we may be ourselves, look back at this point in time. Think about where we were, and what's this 2026? It was 25 years ago, internet. We just was just like internet, like wow. And everybody was concerned about no one would give their credit card on the internet. Like, oh, that's crazy. But all of a sudden we got past that, right? We started getting
Mhm.
regulations around it, we started getting governance around it, and then we started to see it grow and change. All of a sudden, it became the business model, right? Look at your Amazons of the world. Look at
Mhm.
your Ubers of the world. You start looking at, wow, technology is now the de facto industry that runs the world, right? And
Mhm.
because of social and mobile cloud computing, now AI has a seat at the table where it couldn't have done that before because it didn't have the ubiquitous world of cloud computing that we do now. Now, with all that said, everybody's like, oh, well, what about all the data centers that have to be made? But I guarantee you, they'll find a way to now make data centers not so industrialized as it is today, and say environment unfriendly, because you're going to
Mhm.
have to start doing these things a little bit more, I call more elegant. And I'll say this one more thing before I let you chime in on this. We need to understand the natural order of things already. Nature has developed these systems that we call human beings and animals and planets and all these things very, very well. And when we start to take a page out of his book, well, how does it become so efficient in its use of energies and intelligences that will operate on a micro level as well as a microcosmic level that we are not doing because our creations are kind of clunky. So how do we become more elegant in what we want to accomplish? Understanding if we have a cluster of intelligence, we can do things a little better, just like bees and ants do. So this is very important to understand.
It is. It is. That's where we are right now. We have to kind of think ahead and outside of the box of where we are right now, and kind of put the fear and terror aside and say, pragmatically and practically, what is this going to mean? I heard a couple of speakers. I think Dario Amodei and some other folks are talking about 2027 is going to be the year of the agent, right? You
Mhm.
know, and I clearly see it where, you know, I can get on my computer now and now I don't have a browser. Yeah, I just have an interface now that says, you know, plan a trip for me to Sarasota, Florida, for me and my wife. And it does everything, right? Just plans the whole thing, and you know you've gotten to the point where you trust it enough to give it your credit card. So
Everything
it pays,
trust factor. That's
yeah,
right.
it pays for the trip, and now it becomes ubiquitous. That you can't imagine living your life without the ability to be able to just ask for what you want and have it done.
These are important changes in our environment that right now we're a little bit fearful, but we won't be. Going back to what I said about putting the credit card in the internet, it'll become just the way we do business. And because we've got the governance and our society has caught up, or
Mhm.
we're ready and mature enough to handle this type of thing. Now I'm gonna go back because I've been following Alan for a little bit, and I watched him. He talked about like, hey, this guy was making videos and avatars like a year or 2 years ago, and he was making some really cool stuff. I'm like, how did he do that? Talk to us about your journey with AI.
You know, maybe even 3 years ago, Dr. Todd, I think his name is Todd Rogers, and Brian, and some of we had a LinkedIn Live, right? When ChatGPT just popped onto the scene, and we were all enamored about it, and we were talking about all the amazing things that were happening. And then we did another one about 6 months later, just to see where we were. I'm thinking about doing another, getting the band back together and doing another one. Maybe I'll invite you into it on a LinkedIn Live, and we talk about, you know, what is this journey? Where has this journey taken us? I went back and looked at those old videos where we were versus where we are now. Joe Montoya, he works over at Lockheed Martin. He was on there as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
And just, you know, just to see where we are and revisit where we are, because it has been fantastical in ways that we didn't even imagine then, right? Where we're going to be today. And I say that is the part of what's so wonderful about being alive today is to be able to be in a space where transformation is happening this fast. It's not happening in decades. There's life-changing things that are happening within the span of, you know, 6 months, maybe even 6 weeks on some things, right? So just the ability to be able to see that progression is just, you know, amazing. When I look back, when I'm retired, and I look back and I look back over all of the things that I was able to experience in such a short space of time, I think, you know, that's really cool. And one thing I want to tell you about my avatars.
Yeah,
When we
yeah.
talk about when we talk about legacy, my wife's always said, "You're just vain. You're vain." Because she look at my desktop, and I've got like thousands of pictures of myself and different things as I'm putting my avatars together. I'm like, but think about this: 50 years from now, when somebody looks back and they talk about Alan Wesley, I've got a digital record of the way I thought, of the way I was thinking, and then you know you can measure against time and see you know if he was really crazy or if he actually had some things going on that actually made sense. So, but yeah, my process for doing avatars has been a journey. My first one was very bad, right? And I posted it. It was horrible, and I posted it, and people laughed. But I've never been one to care about what people think about me.
No, your experiment. I love the journey.
And I just kept going. And all of a sudden, the laughter turned into chuckle. And then the chuckle turned into, how are you doing this?
Yeah, yeah. They got curious. Yeah.
And now I got people that want to do workshops on how to do the avatars. And I'm like, I absolutely will show you that. It's not a big secret. But, you know, some of these things is, you know, some of it's simpler than you've seen. I've been able to put together some of my videos and some of my avatars on my phone while I'm like getting a haircut or
Yeah,
doing something.
exactly. It
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah,
It's
doesn't take a lot.
no, but
But
that's great. But you do need to understand, like I said earlier, you have to understand how to give it a role, how to give it instructions, and then you have a knowledge base. Even though your wife's saying, "Oh, he's got all these pictures," but that's his knowledge base. So when you're going to do something different, now that machines can take all that data and create something entirely new.
that's exactly what I did, Grant, is I took all of those clips that I've been making, and now that I've got a Claude account and I've got a Codex account, that's what I do with my extra money, right? And
Mhm.
I have these systems now, and so I take all of that content and throw it in that knowledge base, and now it can reason about all of those clips, and you know I can do combination of things that I didn't even think of, right? The system will say, well, you put these three clips together, these three 8-second clips together, and they talk about decision authority, you know,
Yeah,
and now throw it in the Canva and stitch it all together and then now I've got a video, right? And then
and
I
it's an intelligent video. Remember, you're not just having fun; you're actually teaching something, something that someone else can use and find valuable.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of small businesses that struggle with, marketing, right?
Mhm.
I can't afford to go get a camera crew and send people out and go, shoot videos. But what if I, have avatars that are trusted, right? They're watermarked now. So, and I'm very transparent with people. Like, that's not me. I
Oh
got a
yeah,
fat
there's nothing
version of
wrong
my
with
avatar, a skinny
that.
version of my avatar, a well-dressed version of my avatar.
I think what you said there, I want people to. I remember, and I'm dating myself, but I remember when they came out with Memorex. Is it real or is it Memorex? We're talking about just a cassette tape, and
Hmm.
people are like, oh, but it's not real. Like, but does it really matter? It's okay
Hmm.
that it's an avatar. It's okay. We have been doing CGI for a long time, computer generated imagery for a
Hmm.
long time. The point is, what is it asking you to do? You're a cyber guy. So, what is it asking you to do? Is the information valuable? Is it something that's actually beneficial? Does it matter if it's me or not? I don't think it should be that important as to what its message is.
And what your content is. The people are losing their mind over, oh, it's AI written, it must be garbage and slop. Well, there is AI slop out there, but there are people that are leveraging. It's another writing tool for me.
Exactly.
I've been asked by NIST, I submit things, and NIST are starting to ask National Institute of Standards and Technology, if you're submitting things, you have to disclose if you use AI to do the research. And I
Yeah.
think that's fair. That's
Yeah.
like citing your work in college, right? And you say, yes, artificial intelligence was used in the research and analysis of this concept, but the concept and the premise is mine, right? I drive all of the thinking around it, and it's my concept, right? And
Right.
it's easy. The litmus test is really easy. Corner the person and ask them to recite
And
what
it's
the
not
paper's
that
about.
hard. That's like saying, "Did you do this with a calculator?" Like, well, yeah. You want me to write it out? It take 3 weeks.
You
But
got an
you need to
abacus?
understand what you're doing. Domain authority is still important to understand. It doesn't mean, nah, I don't have to be intelligent. The machine takes over. That you said that earlier. We have to up our game and our intelligence and go to those next levels of wisdom,
Mhm.
context, judgment, right? All that analytical stuff can be done by a computer or a calculator, as I said earlier. But you still have to understand conceptual thinking.
Mhm.
Design thinking is still very, very important to understand ideation. So we've got to get ourselves to a level that we're actually moving our construct of how we live our lives at a higher level that we never did before. Because to your point, this is becoming a different world. I can, instead of going to a browser, I can just speak to my agent. I need to do this, and this, and it comes out. But what's happening is, and I want to preface my audience about this, everything is speeding up.
Mhm.
You can do data and information very, very quickly. Well, guess what? It speeds everything else up. Your
Where do
operation,
you what do
your
you what do
market,
you
your
do? What do you
finance.
do? What do you do beyond that, right? And I
Yeah,
say speeding up. What do? You move up the decision tree, right?
yeah,
You move up to the next level where you're actually consuming that information and making the decision about what's being reasoned. Now, if you've got the right foundation in place and you've got the tiered risk in place and you can trust and you have the trust that you need in your system, now you can be able to move up the decision tree and be able to make decisions on the information that you're getting, right? If your foundation is solid and all your governance is solid, then now that's the next stage where we are. I think we're headed into where people are going to start moving up the decision tree. When they're saying, "Well, if AI is taking my job at the grunt level, what am I going to do next?" You get up ahead of it, right? And then also you create training and onboarding for new people because you can't have a company full of leaders who's going to be in your succession plan, right? So
exactly.
you have to create pathways for people to be able to step up and skip that rung that they can't get on anymore.
Very, very important. And before we leave, you got a couple of things that you're doing that you're being asked to present knowledge and information because you're an expert in your field. Tell us what you got going on.
So the major thing that I have going on is I'm going to be at the Department of Air Force IT and Cyber Power conference that's happening in Montgomery. Next week I'll be there. I'll be presenting on decision authority, exactly what we're talking about today. Train your how do you train your workforce population to understand the tools that they're using and
Mhm.
to be able to insert some discernment and judgment around what they're doing? And, don't be enamored by the magic.
Mhm.
Magic, I say, technology nobody figured out yet, right? So it's not magic. But that's the
It's
major thing
math,
for me.
not magic, as they say. It's
Not
math.
magic. I'm going to be doing some other conferences, but they're more related to work. And then there's a Marcus Evans type of event that's happening in November, where I'm going to be speaking there as well on national security, industrial security a conference. I'll be doing that. So I'm trying. I've been invited into things, and this I work on some of their projects. I actually participated in a OWASP AI Exchange review of the EU AI Act guidance. That was really interesting. Learned a lot about international AI governance. So that was interesting. So I got my hands in different things, and I got a daytime job, so full-time job.
You've been doing a lot of things, so I have to have some disclosures now. So this entire conversation was done with utilizing his bot. That is not Alan. That is a bot that he made. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Stop it! This is the real me. It's me. What is it? You put your hand in front of your face, and then they can tell.
Oh yeah, so that was not Alan Wesley. No, I had to make this fictitiously. But I do want to ask you one last question. Now, you've been on a lot of different podcasts. You've done a lot of interviews, that type of thing. You've seen a lot of my content, what I've done out there, and interviewed a lot of different people. Now you've gone through the FollowThe podcast. How do you feel about your interview?
I think it was lively, it was energetic, and you surprised me how prepared you were on because I'll tell you, and this I'm just being transparent with the audience. We didn't sit down and talk an hour before this happened, right? So everything is very much. I think it's your experience and having done this so many times, you do your homework up front, and so you're able to just jump right in. And I think that actually creates a better connection with the guests on your show. So everything doesn't feel like it's rehearsed and it's organic, and we can have open conversations about how we operate and how we deal with this technology these days. So that's very refreshing. I appreciate that.
I love it, man. I love it. You gotta let the audience know how to contact you. What's the best possible way?
Best way to get hold of me is on LinkedIn. I'm also on Substack. I'm on Medium. I put content on my Cyber Explorer website, my blog. And did I forget somebody? Oh, YouTube and Flipboard. I curate some magazines on Flipboard. So you can find my content in lots of different places. I figured out how to play the SEO game too, right? If you're a master of your moat and you actually build it that way, if you Google me and you Google persistent knowledge dilemma, or you Google any of the concepts that I'm working on, I come straight to the top of the list.
I love that. I love it. See, this guy, he's living what I preach almost every week about domain authority, making your expertise visible. Alan Wesley has made his expertise visible. He's helping a lot of people. And I'm glad how you talk to the SMB world, the small business owner, the mom and pop, the Main Street America, how you can begin to utilize business intelligence at scale. This is something that's kind of new, and we got to get used to it. Like, wow, I can have market research at my fingertips about what I'm doing, and my market is not so small now. It's very, very big if we know how to drive the car. So this is a brand new shiny object out there. Do not be afraid of it. Let's get in front of it, and that's why I'm doing my Omaha AI Accelerators. We'll be doing this also nationwide as well. I wanted to invite your entire audience to check out all the episodes of Follow Brand at 5-star BDM. That is the number 5. That is star, STAR, B for brand, D for development, M for masters.com. And I want to thank you so much for being on the show. All right. You take care of yourself.
Man, who's your favorite podcaster? Man, Grant, man. I love Grant's podcast. Well, who's Grant? I'm going to send you the link. I love Grant.
I love the interview. I've done a lot of these, and this is a great one. It's always great to talk to people who know what they're doing, and it's clear you're a great host, and you've done this many times before.
I feel great that we're having this conversation here. Met a new person in business who I previously didn't know.
It was an amazing podcast. Grant is an amazing interviewer. I learned a lot.
Really enjoyed this. Great questions, great talk track. Super appreciate you having me on. It's been a very fun episode to talk about a lot of things that I don't always get to dive into. So this has been a fantastic conversation.
I wouldn't be where I am here today, of course, not on this stage. However, not in my current business projection and my current business model without working with you.
The difference between influence and legacy, it's the platform that carries your voice. You're not visible because you lack talent. You're visible because your brand doesn't speak. I've built 5-star BD&M to change that. Most leaders have the expertise, but not the presence, the vision, but not the vehicle. Across 3 cities, one brand is helping leaders rise above the noise. Here in the heart of Omaha, strategy isn't left to chance. It's engineered with precision. In Omaha, we engineered your executive brand, AI-powered, data-driven, precise. TISA went from a local nonprofit to a national speaker in 90 days. We don't guess your brand strategy, we build it. On the shores of St. Croix, your brand takes on depth and meaning, shaped through curated retreats and legacy experiences. In St. Croix, strategy becomes soul. Our retreats don't just refine your message, they rediscover your mission. One founder rewrote his entire company story here. Funding followed 30 days later. This is where leaders remember who they were meant to be. In vibrant Miami, momentum meets amplification, transforming your voice into a movement. In Miami, your brand becomes a movement. Business development accelerators, audience building. Joy came with an old website and an outdated company name, but she left with 5,000 followers and a waiting list. This is where you scale with soul. 3 cities, 1 mission, your legacy ignited. It started with a thread. Let's pull it together. Stop blending and start leading. 5-star BDM, where legacy is engineered, embodied, and ignited. Visit 5starbdm.com and book your brand audit today.
How many times have you heard the word artificial intelligence in the last month? Now ask yourself a better question. How many times has artificial intelligence actually put money in your pocket? Artificial intelligence is everywhere, but revenue is not. Here is a truth most small businesses do not want to admit. Your next customer could be calling right now, and nobody is answering. It is not because your team does not care. It is because your system is broken. Missed calls mean missed revenue, and every unanswered call is a lost opportunity. In this episode of Follow the Brand, Grant sits down with the leaders of We Level to explore how agentic artificial intelligence is changing the game for small businesses. Not with more hype, but with speed to lead and real implementation. Imagine systems that answer, qualify, schedule, and follow up with customers, even when you are off the clock. This is not about replacing your brand, it is about protecting it. The businesses that win in the artificial intelligence era will not be the ones with the most tools. They will be the ones that know how to connect artificial intelligence to revenue. Watch the latest episode of Follow the Brand. Your business called, nobody answered.
Hey everyone, it's Grant McGaw, CEO of 5-Star BDM and host of the award-winning Follow the Brand podcast and TV series, where I help you to build a 5-star brand that people will follow. My genius is personal brand development through intelligent communication and helping you achieve your business and career goals. I am a requested speaker on digital technology and brand development issues. I want to work with you to increase the value of your current opportunities while attracting new ones. Every one of you is unique, and we all share challenges that can be addressed through smart branding. As a super connector, I work with you as an executive coach to guide you along the complicated business and career development road, providing the enhancement tools and information you need to succeed. Together, I will help you succeed in today's challenging business climate. I will evaluate and measure your progress. Best of all, I am right alongside you every step of the way. Build the brand called you. Genius is coming.
Tune in for our next show or click on our website at www.5starbdm/followthebrandtv. Thank you.